Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us, first of all, and giving up your time to watch some of our content. We really appreciate it, and we hope to make it as useful for you as possible. My name is Adam Sroka. I am CEO and co-founder here at Hypercube. If you're not familiar with who we are an energy technology partner building the UK's leading solutions provider for consultancy and tech services to really help scale and accelerate the energy transition and help you do more with your data and unlock the power of data and AI, software and technology to really achieve your goals and drive more from the assets that you already have. Today, we're going to be talking about building a business case for data and analytics. This is something that is a really interesting journey that a lot of people go on in their tech career, and something that can be quite daunting and quite hard if you've not done it before. Noticed this a few years ago, really talented people not managing to get access to the resources and the things they need, or struggling to make the case for their stuff. And actually, there's not a lot of great advice out there on how to do this. So I've been through it a few times in my own career, and then as a consultant now, helped plenty of people and dozens of companies go through this process and create the frameworks, the materials, the processes to really achieve strong business cases, to get the things they want, do more with their data, convince stakeholders and get buy-in. So going to talk through some of this today and actually do this slightly differently from how we usually do webinars. This isn't going to be death by PowerPoint. I'm going to walk through the process that we do, and we've knocked up a case study to show you some of the things that I would do and gather in preparation for building a really strong case study, business case for building data analytics solutions within your organization. So if we can just flip over to on the screen now, you should be able to see both a Word document and a PDF. Now, we have put a lot of time and effort into generating this PDF document, which is available for download. We can send it to you if you're watching this video. And the idea was to put together like a workbook, that's something that you could use to start to really build a really strong business case for you. This came about from, again, the journey I've described where I had to do this myself and struggled, and then went and read some books and found some advice on what makes a strong business case, what doesn't. I was really fortunate years ago to work with someone who actually consulted on exactly this, building strong business cases. So I learned some tips and tricks from him as well. I then wrote some blog posts on it. So if you go onto the Hypercube blog, you'll find there's a few blog posts written by me on what goes into a good business case, when they succeed, when they don't, and a guide for like writing a strong one. And we've taken all that together, and we wanted to produce a really useful document that you could work alongside to gather all the stuff that I think makes average business cases really, really strong. So if you've never been on the journey before, if you've never done this before, this is what the resource is for you. On the left of this screen, just here, we have a Word document. Now, this is a fictional company that I've made up, and it's a blend of a few companies in the energy sector, Polychora Energy, that are effectively asset owner operators, developers that are trying to build wind and solar assets and BESS assets in the UK markets, and they have identified a need to develop a data analytics platform. Totally fictional. Some of all the numbers are kind of just made up, but I wanted to give you a sense for like what I write down and the level of detail I put into these when I'm starting to collate my notes. And you'll see that it's only a 3-page document. It's not War and Peace, and this is just to get you in a really good space to gather the information and get your head into what this is. We'll go through the guide step by step. There's 10 stages, and as we go through it, we'll refer back to this as a bit of a case study, and we can share this with you so that you can get a sense for like some of the numbers I'm putting in and things that work for you. Must say there's no right or wrong here. This is just what's worked for me in the past, and you might find it's different for you, or you have other experiences, but hopefully this will just give you a sense for some tips and tricks and some stuff to include for when you want to make another business case in your organization to advance your data analytics AI stuff. So we'll just go through the document here. So the first page, really lovely picture of me. So apologies for that. But this is just to really set out like what the document's about. And actually, one thing I would suggest to people, like we include this section because if you're about to embark on like, right, I need to write a business case, then actually maybe share this page or go through this page with the senior stakeholder or the budget approver, because it will help align their expectation of what they're going to receive and the things you're going to deliver. Now, this can't be perfect for every organization. This is an abstraction, and based from our experience of doing this dozens and dozens of times, your context, your business is always going to be more important. The specifics of your life, your career. So thread through everything you do here, the more specific that you have in your organization. So if there's a different stage or sets of data or other things that this is missing, that someone in your business tells you is really important, that's going to supersede any of the information that I'm giving you here today. But if you've got starting from a blank slate, this should give you like everything you need to get moving. And for those of you that are a bit like on the journey, like the business case story is always a really interesting one. I think like you start life as a techie, you get really, really good at building solutions and understanding the technology landscape. And you get like this kind of visceral, like gut feel for what good looks like, what things you might need. And I equate it to like, if someone's making like a chili and they ask me to try a bit, and I try it and I go, it needs more cayenne pepper, it needs more salt. That is something that I just like know and I can do because of my experience having done it in the past. But I couldn't write down how to do that. It's just really hard to write that down. Like, if you taste this, do that, do that, do that. That's not really how this works. You learn through the experience, right? So you get to that point where you're a competent chef or you're a competent techie building solutions, and you identify that your business needs a new data and AI platform, a better forecast, some automated reporting or something like that. And you tell your managers, and then there's this huge disconnect between your ability to taste the flavor of what's going on and make a recommendation and their understanding of the environment. And the business case should be the bridge that gets them from where they are to your understanding of what is needed. And so in it, you want to capture a load of stuff. You want to capture the need, like what is the need of the company? You want to define the potential opportunity and the upside from doing it. You want to explore potential solutions and present them so that you're not just railroading a decision down a certain path. Then once you've kind of picked a recommendation, you've explored options and you've picked a recommendation, you want to think about the risks of that and ways you can mitigate those risks. You want to, if you can, quantify, and we'll get into the weeds of all these in a minute, but you want to quantify the benefits and the ROI, speak the language of the business, right? Money and time, usually. You want to look at what is the scope, like what is the boundary of this solution that you're presenting? What are the things that it does do and it doesn't do? Like, how can you really tightly control the delivery here in the ask? Once you've done all that, you think about how would you go about implementing it? Is this a off-the-shelf thing that you want to buy? Do you have to build it yourself? Do you have to hire people? Are you going to lean on third parties and external consultants? Once you understand that, you then move into estimating what's the cost, what are the budget considerations, is this achievable? Are you asking for budget as part of the business case? And then a thing people often miss is like some of the kind of Scrum Agile stuff, like what's definition of done? What does good look like? Is there a deliverable or a measurable, like provable point that says this has been a success? Can you really strongly define that in the business case? Because if you can, it's going to give your execs and your senior stakeholders a lot more certainty that they're going to be able to check on the progress of where they're investing. And then once you put all that stuff together, you're in a really, really good spot to put together a good business case. And you can take the information and summarize it in a really excellent executive summary that's going to enable people to scan it and share it really quickly and get to grasp with it. There's, I think, a huge challenge in technology in that you always have to like present your view of the world to someone, and 9 times out of 10 they have to then parrot what you've said and present it elsewhere. So you want to prepare all your outcomes and all your outputs in a way that's easily like copy pastable and parrotable, so that they are getting across the message that you want them to and not paraphrasing or getting a bit lost in some sort of like complexities of the definitions. So they're the top level stages. That's what we're going to go through today. We'll go through each individually, and I'll talk through the case study. So we've described Polychora energy, completely fictional, meant to be representative of like a GB asset owner operator developing BESS and solar. They've got megawatts coming online next year. They are authorized as the virtual lead party. They want to get into the balancing mechanism, all that. They've raised a load of money, and they want to be data driven. Importantly, is this down here is they want to be data driven, but they are still in a world where everything's done in Excel and like that legacy kind of IT. They maybe don't have a huge tech team, or they don't want to be a tech company. They want to really efficiently develop and manage assets, but there's a need to do this, especially in BESS, right? They're more data hungry than ever before. I picked this because I think this is representative of a lot of the people that might join this webinar and that might get involved in some of the work we do. However, if you really struggle with this as a case study and it doesn't marry up to like your environment, your context, give us a shout. Like, we're going to talk later on about the clinics that we run for case study business cases. And I keep saying case study, apologies. I'm going to talk about the clinics that we run for business cases and how we help people build these and get into the definitions. One thing I'll say before we start on this, right, is this is just to collect the information and put together the stuff you need to write the case. There's two things you need to do. You need to think about the format that's going to land within your organization. So there might be a predefined format that your business has to use for business cases, or it might be, you might prefer slides, it might be pages on a wiki, it might be documents like a Word document like this. Find the one that works for you. You've got to take the information here, then write it. And there might be defined headings and things like that, depending on the size of organization and the level of governance that you have. If you don't, this is your opportunity to build this, and you have a think about the reporting structure that's going to work. The other thing I'll say is this is like the easy bit of building a business case. Getting all the stuff together, the research and putting the numbers in a place is typically the easy bit. The next bit is the specifics of your context and wrangling the kind of social political climate within your organization to get buy-in and get people on board. Now, we've got a load of content coming online really soon about executive buy-in, how to navigate the politics and things like that. So watch our blog for some of that material, and that will come up. But one of the things we do in the clinics to build business cases is talk about that stuff, the harder stuff that is never going to be abstractable to a webinar like this, and it will always need to be a bit more one-to-one. So if that's interesting for you and you want a bit of advice in how to navigate that stuff, because again, if you're a techie, you might have never done this before, give us a shout. We'll jump on a clinic and I can help you sort of think about some of the things we do, collect some of the stuff. I've got a few frameworks, a few stuff, sort of tips and tricks that will really, really help that. But we'll do that in a sort of more one-to-one setting where we can get into the weeds of your specifics. So within Polychora Energy, we have Jane Smith. Jane Smith is a senior market analyst. She's got loads of like energy sector expertise. She really knows her stuff. She's built some fancy models in the past, and she's come into Polychora and she's spotted that this Excel-driven architecture is just not going to work. And she has a really strong need for more unified data platform and some advanced analytics to really help migrate their workflows into something that can be more real time and unlock a load of new benefits for her. So in this scenario, she's going to be asking for like 350k capex to build a really like all singing, all dancing data platform with about 120k opex to maintain it and continue development on it over the next few years, like support, continually develop it over the next few years. And she spotted Lakehouse, AWS as the kind of enabling tech. So that's like who you are in this scenario, in this that we've made up, right? We're thinking from the perspective of Jane. So with all that in mind, let's move on to stage one, right? So stage one is all about like, what is the actual need? So in this stage, what we want to do is think about, ignore the technology, ignore like the solutioning bit. Think about what's the actual need, the pain point that is within your business, either the pain point, the missed opportunity, the risk or the cost, the thing that is you're in a situation and you can spot that there's a better situation you could be in, and what are the deliverable outcomes that get you to that second better situation, right? And so that's not like, oh, I need a database, blah blah blah. It's, well, end user X needs report Y automated at frequency Z, because actually their workloads are increasing and they're scaling, blah blah blah. Like that, they need to see this information at this time, and it's probably this report or this existing thing, but faster or better or more detail. When you're doing that, think about data silos, think about like performance metrics within the business, the KPIs, the strategic plan for the business. Everything you ever do should be lined up to the tech strategy of the wider business if you're in the data space, and the tech strategy should be supporting the wider business strategy. So are there OKRs, are there KPIs that you can thread in here and you think actually these are suffering because of this pain point, this need? Think about the decision makers and who's affected by this. And if you can, start to gather benchmarks from across the industry. Are there people that you can look at through marketing or through interviews with experts or reaching out to the community that are going to help you say, well, I'm doing this and I can see that elsewhere actually it's this. So like in the BES space, for example, you've got like the battery performance leaderboards and things. You can look at that and pull out a number. And that's really going to communicate really quickly that you're not just making this up. It's not just because you want to do it. There's a real gap from where you are to where you want to be. And so in the case study here, we've talked about how the trading desk is relying on certain KPIs that end up a bit stale for intraday trading decisions. There's a manual workload that's costing like 2 days a month, and there's an increase in risk of these large penalties. Actually, there's maybe vision that as the scale of the portfolio grows, this is going to scale linearly and going to cause a headache when the headcount's really large. And then you can spot through benchmarking that your performance is much lower than some of the other people in the market. Once you've done all that, you've got some good numbers to get moving, and then you want to move on to stage 2. So what's the opportunity? This is starting to talk about how that situation 2 where things are better. So you've established the pain point in the first bit. Now you want to describe the future. What does utopia look like? Once the pain is resolved or the outcome is achieved, what does it look like? What does the new world look like? You want to clearly articulate this, and again, try and line things up to the strategic ambition, and try and think about goals across the business. So is like growth the strategic driver, or is compliance the big headache? Like the tools you're using currently don't comply with the new regulations and things like that. Describe how your new thing or the new solution gets you to key strategic goals that are going to line up, and talk to the rest of the business that aren't in like your world, in your day-to-day. And then start to look at, if you can, the specific teams and humans in the business that it's going to affect, because they're going to be the main beneficiaries of the outcome. So in this case, we've said, we're going to decrease the forecast error to 5%, which is going to translate really quickly into a pound coin number. Like cheat code for everything you ever do in tech, I think, is convert all your numbers into pounds if you can. If you can't convert them into pounds, convert them into seconds and hours, because money and time is the universal language everyone speaks. Everyone understands budgets from a money perspective, days and time and hours and weeks from like when things are going to get delivered. If you're an organization that is very complex and you're pitching something within a bubble that is very highly technical, and they really understand the impact of improving precision or accuracy or something like that, in those circumstances, like, you can use other metrics and they can be impactful. But I deeply think that nothing is ever as impactful as pounds and hours. Money and time just talks to everyone. Everyone gets it. Everyone can look over into your patch and understand what's happening, right? So in this case, we've talked about forecast error coming down. Jane's identified that we're going to avoid, on average, 180k a year in fees. Again, these numbers are all made up just for the case study, but just to give you this is the kind of thing I would be writing down as I'm going through and collecting this stuff. And again, it doesn't have to be War and Peace. Like, this is maybe a touch light because we're trying to get through it quickly on a webinar. But if I was doing this for real, it wouldn't be much longer. And it's just, what are the key elements that I'm going to thread into the report that I write at the end? And we talked about how we're going to increase like 24 days a year of extra productivity, which will save us in labor costs and human capital and things like that. Not to mention the peripherals of like frustration and doing boring work and all that stuff. Next bit then is we want to look at exploring solutions. So one thing that you absolutely have to do, I think, like, it's very easy to pick a solution and then write the justification, as opposed to thinking about the problem and then exploring the solutions. Like, we're very guilty of having biases for favorite technologies and things that we want and knowing the answer before we know the question. What I would do then is think about several options. Now, certainly pitch the one that you kind of have the gut feel that is best, but explore, like, build it yourself, explore, are there off-the-shelf tools, explore consultancies and external third parties. If you want some support on like buy, build, partner strategies, I've written loads of material on that. There's, again, on the Hypercube blog, there's blog posts on that, buy, build, partner, and I think we've done a webinar on that in the past. If not, we'll do one in the future. Start to explore 2 or 3 options. And one thing I really like to do is showcase how you can tweak some of the dials between saving money and building it as cheaply as possible, or delivering it as quickly as possible. And I'll talk a little bit later about some of the small, medium, large framing that I do as a consultant and I've done internally that's super successful in getting like others to understand what you're asking for. So in this case, we've talked about high-level deliverables as well is really important. Like, this will deliver. So you talk about the solution definition and the things you're going to explore, and the tangible bits that like the budget holder or the stakeholder is going to see at the end of it, whether it's model deployments, whether it's automation, whether it's reports and dashboards that they can go and look at. Talk about that. So in this case, Jane's explored 3 paths, and she's looked at buy, build, partner options as well. So she thinks her preferred solution is to build this using Delta Lake, Apache Spark, and a few other tools. But she's explored, actually, there's some SaaS data warehouses that she could go for, but she's identified that, there's a risk with lock-in on that, and the license fee is actually pretty large, which probably not attractive for her, because it doesn't give her all the benefits that the build does. And she understands that there's partner solutions, but in this case, she thinks that she can do most of it herself. And to be honest, you can blend these. Like, you can blend these options if you're exploring solutions. Maybe for something like this, a holistic data platform, there's maybe an off-the-shelf solution with a wraparound of other services, and you use a partner to give you some sense checking on the architecture and the testing. So these don't have to be prescriptive, and you're not committing to any of these at this point. You're identifying a few, but then picking the one that you are going to write the rest of the business case for. So in this case, she's preferred a build, and she's going to write the rest of the case as though we're going down that route. This enables your stakeholder to say, well, wait a minute, I really do like the other for these reasons, and so on and so forth. And it shows that you're not just railroading this decision. Next thing we want to do then is, with your selection, you want to get into, well, what are the major risks that are linked to doing that? So if you want to build it myself, do we have the skills? Do we have the talent? Do we then need to maintain technical skills over years that are going to be hard to hire for in the future? You want to look at cultural risks as well. So like, tech risks are the ones we'll jump on: cybersecurity, technology, XYZ. But actually, like, culturally, is your business ready for this new platform? Or is it going to get the buy-in, or is there going to be actually a big change management piece as you're changing workflows? That stuff's always harder than getting the right tech in place and getting the right solutions threaded together. Are there regulatory risks that are going to mean that this needs to be done by a certain time, or it's going to cause a headache? Is there, like, I delivered a project at an energy organization, and the NIST directive meant that actually their internal IT team were just really overburdened with some of the changes that they were going through, which meant they couldn't dedicate the time to the project. It was a huge risk that we identified, and we had to mitigate by having cadence and check-ins and doing things in a slightly different way. identify those risks and then just talk to each of them. For each of these risks, you're going to do this, it means this. What's the back out plan? Like, what's the plan B for when this risk comes to light, and what's the impact it's going to have? So in this case, she's identified some technology risks. She's talked about change resistance, and Jane said actually GDPR and cybersecurity isn't a domain that is deeply understood by the existing team. So she wants to maybe look at some more support in that area to ensure that everything they built is totally compliant and aligned. Now that we've identified a solution, we've talked about the risks. Now it's the fun bit. You want to sell it, right? So we want to walk through quantifying those benefits if possible. This is something that's really difficult to do, and I've talked a bit about earlier, but take these dashboards, these models are deployed, this is doing that, and wherever possible, find numbers that are in time and money where you can, that quantify the benefits and the ROI, and also importantly, the timescale to that ROI being realized. So it might save you $500,000 a year, but if it takes 6 years for that savings to start happening, then it's a very different argument to it saving you $300,000 a year, but this year, and so on and so forth. If you can't put numbers like hard numbers on some of these things, look at industry benchmarks. The other thing I would say is be really conservative. So if you can look at industry benchmarks, like from marketing materials and things like that, other businesses, take it with a pinch of salt and say, right, well, these sources report £1 million a year saving, so we're going to estimate a $600,000 a year saving. That way, what you want to do is really put your ask through the ringer. Don't try and like cheat to get your ask over the line, but actually really test it. Because I promise you, if you like fudge the numbers to make it look attractive, get the buy-in, you deliver the project, it's a success, but then actually the real numbers don't come anywhere close, you're going to lose a lot of trust in the business, you're going to cause a lot of pain and frustration, and you're probably not going to get anything else done, or people aren't going to sign off your business cases again in the future. You're much better to over-deliver and be really conservative when you're doing this stage, like what the ROI calculations are. If you don't know the numbers and you can't do this, make some numbers up that are sensible, highlight the fact that they're estimates, and show all of your working. I think this is really powerful. Like, just show the calculation, produce a calculator spreadsheet or whatever that says, this is how I came at the ROI. But by the way, 4 of the 10 numbers are just guesswork based on my gut feel. That gives your stakeholder the chance to like have a rummage and really feel like, do I like this? And oh no, I think that's different. What happens? And scenario plan. So Jane's done this here. She's come up with $500,000, $300,000 in trading, more efficiency. She's also talked about an upside scenario, which is really nice. Like, when we wrote this, we were thinking about, like, actually you could say we're building the business case on A, B, and C, but we actually are quite confident that D and E are going to happen. And if they do, there's even more of an ROI. So you're saying to the stakeholder, sort of sign me off on these, but I'm actually hoping that we'll get a lot more than that, and it'll look like a big win. Once you've done all that, you're kind of into the home stretch now. The rest of the stuff is thinking about, well, actually, what's going to be required to deliver that solution? So, like, who do you need access to? What data sources? What stakeholders are you going to need? Also, if you're going to build it, as in this case, like, who's going to build it? Do you have the skills and the talent? Do they have the time? How much time? Over what time frame? And are there any tools or things in your existing technology stack that you're going to use? Are there new tools that you're going to need? I would always recommend trying to use your existing tool stack wherever possible. It makes procurement and IT happy. It makes things easier from a long-term perspective. But sometimes your business case is for a new tool or something like that. So just thread all that together. And now this is the point at which you're saying, right, I need these things to do it this way. And then once you put all that together, you can identify, do you have these engineers in house? Like, so Jane said, right, it's going to need a data engineer to build the platform. I need sort of 2 or 3 days a week of an analytics engineer. I need 2 days a week of a DevOps person. And I think totally, I'm over the build. I'm going to use 60 days of external support to do my architecture and help me sense check it, and so on and so forth. Once you've done that and you've understood this and you've got the kind of resource asks, you then get into, well, that's the cost. Can I break that down into a timeline? Now, if this isn't something you've ever done before, it can be quite tricky. I would use like a t-shirt sizing methodology, break things down into like look at agile epics and what are the high level deliverables, and if they're too big still, break them down into the high level components of those deliverables, and then just use a t-shirt sizing like small, medium, large, 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks to ballpark the estimates and put that together. Again, this doesn't have to be the perfect project plan that you're committing to. This is indicative to get it over the line and get it signed off. So show you're working, show here's a rough estimate of where I think, and just put a note in your actual business case saying, I need some support from a professional project manager or a senior techie to help scope this a little bit tighter and get more information. Because you don't want your business case to be pass fail either. Like it should be, even if it's a pass, it should be iterative. It should be, okay, we like this. Now let's extend it and do a bit more research and lean into it a bit more and understand it a bit better. Because building and building on it makes it better and means everyone's aligned and everyone's involved. You're not the only person on the hook for delivering this because you put the business case together. You're bringing other people into the mix. So Jane's done that. She's looked at a discovery phase of 4 weeks, 8 weeks of an MVP. And then once that's happy and we've got some live dashboards and stuff moving, she's looking at scaling it to the rest of the portfolio, adding maybe a forecasting notebook and handing it over and doing some training. Really mature kind of project delivery comes from some of our kind of standard delivery stuff that we do for large customers. And again, like if you struggle with this, like this is our bread and butter as consultants. We do this all the time. So jump on a clinic, give us a shout, and we can help you look at this and really quickly put some sensible numbers together that argue your point. Like I said, home stretch now. Once you're there, you want to go back through your scoping requirements and break down costs. Like what are the people going to cost you? How's the budget going to be split? Do think about CapEx only versus OpEx only versus a mixed option, because it enables your stakeholders to, they might have certain types of budget that you're not familiar with. So explore, can it be done with one big lump sum payment, or is there going to be, can you annualize it over the year or over several years, or is there going to need to be a mix? So if you're building something big and complicated like Jane is, a data platform, there's going to be a big upfront cost to build it, and then there's going to be ongoing maintenance and support as it grows and scales for the rest of the platform. Consider not only the tooling costs, but the infrastructure costs and the human costs. Understand the hours, take the hours of whoever's involved and try and figure out their hourly or daily cost to the business. And by the way, it's a lot more than just their salary, because you have to factor in benefits and pensions and all this sort of stuff, churn, holidays. But get a sensible number and then try and annualize that and thread that into a headcount OpEx cost where you can. Again, if you show you're working and you show you've really thought about these numbers, it just makes a more powerful argument and means people trust that you've done the work and got it there. And finally, and again, something people miss is like, what are the metrics for success? What are the easily provable success criteria? Like when this is done, what are the 3 or 4 things that your stakeholder can look at and share with their peers to say, this is done. And now look, 12 months ago, we had a data latency of an hour and it's gone down to 5 minutes, which means we can do more real-timey stuff. Our forecast errors decreased and our manual reporting load has gone down, even though the scale of the reporting's gone up. Like these are things that you can imagine a CTO or a CEO putting into a slide deck that they're presenting to the board or the investors. And if you do this and you give them these like easy sound bites, quick wins, it's going to make them look good. They're going to be thankful for that, and you're going to get more as time goes on to more trust, and it's going to be easier for you because you've shown that you're a change agent within your business and you really get stuff done. And finally, you're there. You've done all the hard stuff. You've put the thing together. The last piece is to just take all of that and condense it into an executive summary that highlights just all the key numbers. There's a lot of numbers in here. Think of the main ones, like at a glance, what does the CEO want to look at? Like who's going to own it? What's the timelines? When's the deliverables? And summarize what you've done. Then all you've got to do is take all of that together and put it into the format that your organization uses for a business case. So you can use these same headings, and you can just turn some of these bullets into paragraphs, and thread some numbers through like that. It's quite a nice thing. I'd always put the exec summary at the top. The call to action piece is important as well. What's the ask? So you've done the work, you've put all this forward. You're now saying, right, I want a commitment to this budget by this date, by this person, blah blah blah. Make that crystal clear. Don't just say there's the business case, because you might go, oh great, and a nod. You want to drive action forward and make the ask, and ask for what you want, right? So thread that into the document as well. But you write all that up, look at some of the stuff on this page and how you condense like everything into a one pager, and then you'll have something really powerful that's quick to share and understand that people can get on board with. All in all, like when I've built these, even for really complicated projects, like no more than 4 pages, really short, light, like document that you can get into, understanding that there's all this other information that underpins the document. If people want more detail, they can come and get it. But I think you don't need to go overboard. It doesn't need to be War and Peace. Like you can have this as a nice, light, crisp document. And if people need more, you get more to them. Make it iterative, and that will just make it a better document all round. And you're done. So look, really appreciate you taking the time to walk through that with us. Like, I hope it was useful. It's worked for me internally multiple times. And then as a consultant, I've done this probably over 100 times, like with loads of different customers, helped different business units make their business case to do more and accelerate, like making their techies more powerful and be able to get what they want within their organization. It can be really frustrating going from the world in which you like really know your stuff and can't drive change because you're not a budget holder, you don't understand the commercial bit of the business. This is like one of the first steps in going from an individual contributor to like being a real change agent, being able to actually drive the business and achieve the goals that you need. And I've presented all this as like building tech, but actually like business cases can be done for all sorts. Maybe there's an event you want to go and attend. There's a conference you want to go to. Maybe you want to get $2,500 for hotel and flights or whatever to travel the world and do some learning and development. But you can use this format for anything. Like maybe it's a new hire, maybe it's new training or whatever. Have a think about that as a template works for lots of different things, not just like big platform builds. And I think it's worth getting into the rhythm of, because you start to think about the asks that the business has on you to prove something. Really appreciate your time. Just before we go, look, if you want to hear more from us, we really appreciate your feedback. So let us know how this went, if this was useful for you. Once you've done this, like I said earlier, this is the easy bit, writing the thing, actually getting it over the line and like driving adoption and buy-ins really can be difficult, and it's very specific to your context. If you want some support with that, we run these clinics. They are one-to-one. It'd be me and some of my colleagues, and we can talk about tips and tricks and tactics. We can listen to what you're struggling with. We can sense check the document you've written and help you drive this forward. We'll share out links with this that help you check in with us and book these if you want to come and speak to us on this. But don't be shy about sharing your kind of journey with us and seeing if we can help. Final thing I'd say is, if you're not already a member, come and join the Beyond Energy community, where we're starting to do events in person, and we're going to have like online community stuff, newsletters, blog posts, and really want to build a place where professionals in energy can get together and talk about this stuff. So thank you once again. Really appreciate your time. I hope it's useful, and I wish you all the best in writing business cases.